Hi guys, today we're going to talk about how to write your own wedding vows. I'm going to give you a step-by-step process, 10 steps for how to write your own wedding vows in just 1 hour. If you follow these steps, you're going to end up with the perfect wedding vows after an hour's time. That's all there is to it. A lot of people feel really stressed out about writing their own vows, and that's understandable because you are going to be saying these in front of a lot of people, including the one person who you love most in the world, so you want to get it as right as possible. I should say though that no matter what you do, no matter what you say, oh well, you know, within reason, it's gonna be perfect. No matter what you do, it's gonna be perfect as long as it's sort of about under 3 minutes long, and you're just speaking from the heart. There's really not too much you can do to get this wrong, right? So just throw all that stress out the window, throw out all those expectations of perfection. Perfection doesn't exist, I'm sorry. And just kind of embrace the process and have fun with it. That's gonna be my recommendation to you during this hour of writing your own vows. So I've seen a lot of tips on how to do this online, and I kind of just created my own 10-step template for this that I think works best. Of course, there are a million other ways to do it, so just find, if this doesn't work for you, find something else that works, but I think this will work for you. I think it'll work for anyone. My name is Brittany. I write for wayfaringweddings.com. I'm also a teacher, and I just like making templates and things like this. I believe that everybody has a writer inside of them, even if they hate to write or they think that they hate to write. So I'm just really happy to help you through this today. And so yeah, let's get started. I'll also leave some tips at the end of this video for anyone who's having a bilingual wedding or multilingual wedding. There's some vow tips for how to deal with that situation. So we'll get to that at the end of this video. All right, guys, so let's go. So step number 1 in this 10-step process is to set a date. And this is important because if you don't set a date, it's not gonna happen. You're gonna end up writing your vows the night before your wedding, and that's possible. I'm sure you have an hour the night before your wedding, but I don't suggest this. I think it's just really much better to get it out of the way, out of your thoughts, or to at least have attempted it and you have something written, you have like a draft that you can work with and change later. So set a date, I would say at least a month before your wedding. Put it on your calendar, and my suggestion for this is that you and your partner write your vows together. Now, you're not going to show each other, you're not going to tell each other what you're writing, but you're going to be in the same space at the same time, sort of like for accountability and moral support. Okay, so talk to your partner about a month before your wedding, set a date, put it on both of your calendars, and this is going to be the time that you write your vows together. We set a date for everything else when we're planning our wedding. We set dates with our florists, with our photographers, etc., etc. Why can't you set a date to write your vows, which are the heart and soul of your wedding ceremony, right? It's really important. So do it, put it on the calendar, be accountable to each other, and then make it something fun. So make it like a date, a fun date. So you're like going out for dinner or dinner at home, cooking dinner together, or like go out to a bar or go hiking. Do something fun that you guys can look forward to. So you're like, okay, that's the cool date we're gonna go on and write our vows together. And so at some point during this date, you'll be writing your vows. All right, cool. So you set that date. You're also gonna bring some notebooks, pens, or your laptops with you so you can actually do the actual writing. Step number 2 is to actually go on that date and set a timer for 60 minutes together. And make sure that you go into it with a clear, positive attitude, that you don't have a lot of other things on your mind. If you're feeling really stressed out or you feel like you have so many things that you have to do, make sure that you talk about that before setting the 1 hour timer, because during that 1 hour you should just feel relaxed and focused on writing your vows. And yeah, so if there's anything else bothering you, make sure you get that out of the way before your date or earlier on in your date. Step number 3 is to set the parameters or rules of the vows. See, we're not even into the writing yet. Not even there yet. For the first 10 minutes of this hour, you're gonna be discussing with your partner what the rules are. You could actually do this even before you set the timer if you want. And what I mean by rules are just like, how many words should this be? Because you don't want one person to write a book and one person to just say like 2 sentences. Ideally, if this doesn't bother you, do it. But a lot of people like their vows to kind of match in length and tone. So a good length is something like 250 to 500 words. and that'll put you at about 2 to 3 minutes of speaking each, which works really well, I think. It's not too long, it's not too rambly, just right. And also the tone of your vows. So do you want them to be really funny? Do you want them to be super serious and romantic? A mixture of both? I think most people kind of like a little bit of both, some levity and then also some sweet romantic stuff in there. So just have a quick little conversation. Do you also want to like not tell embarrassing stories about each other? For some people this really bothers them. If it doesn't bother you at all, like say go for it, or maybe just like one embarrassing story. Just set some rules or expectations, just talk about it, right? Like what do you imagine the vows to be at our wedding? I think part of the anxiety of vow writing is that we just don't know what the other person is doing at all. So you can kind of clear that up in the beginning, just a general picture of what your vows might look like, and that'll just bring you some peace, I think, as you go into the writing portion of this. In step 4 is when we start writing. And we start writing, I say, with some music. So this is where you have to prepare a little bit beforehand. It's optional, but I think it's a good idea, is to each like bring a playlist or some music that reminds you of each other. So some like your favorite songs, or if you're making a wedding playlist, you could bring that and just like put your earbuds in and listen to music that reminds you of your partner, or whatever romantic music to get you in the mood, to make you feel a little mushy-gushy like you're gonna feel on the day of your wedding. Yeah, and then listen to music either a little bit before you start writing or as you're writing, and it'll just really help to put you in the mood for what you're about to tap into. And I'm going to stop here at step 5 for just a second. Just pause for a minute to give you a few tips that you want to keep in mind as you're starting writing. And also to remind you to please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more wonderful wedding tips and discussions. Thanks, guys. So steps 5 through 9 are going to be you writing things. So keep these things in mind. One is that you don't have to memorize any of this. Don't even try to memorize it. You're just going to write these 250 to 500-ish words, and you're going to be able to read them on your wedding day. So please don't worry about memorizing them. That's a whole other level of stress that you just don't need on your wedding day. Another tip to keep in mind is to use natural language as you're writing. Don't try to be too lofty or someone who you're not, or try to sound overly something that just feels unnatural to you. Just speak how you normally would. Also, if you're getting married in a particular religious or cultural tradition, make sure and talk to your officiant before starting to write your vows, because there might be certain words that you have to say. And maybe it's okay for you to incorporate your own vows into these traditions. Also, I know in some places, legally, you have to say specific words. Like I know in Quebec, that's how it is, where we're planning to get married. You have to say specific things in order for it to be legally recognized, but you can also have your own vows, say your own vows on top of that. So just check in with those things, different religious, cultural expectations, as well as legal words that maybe you have to say where you are. Also keep in mind that I'm going to give you a template for this, but you don't have to totally reinvent the wheel. It's great to like look at other vows online and stuff. Just take them as inspiration, and don't feel like don't be too influenced by them, because it won't sound like you, right? So even if you don't think your words are good enough, they are, and what's coming from you is better than taking something from online, someone else's words, in my opinion. Okay, so step number 5, here's the template. Here's the template for how to write your own vows. In step 5, you're gonna write 1 to 2 sentences connecting with the witnesses who are watching your ceremony. All of this is optional too, guys. You don't have to do any of this, but I think it makes kind of perfect, beautiful vows. For me personally, this is what I think, okay? So the reason I like to start off with, I like the idea of starting off with connecting with your crowd or the people in your audience, whatever you want to call them, your guests, is because I think that draws them into your vows and makes them feel really present and part of the experience. So you could say something like, I'm just reading from my blog here, something like your partner's name. I'm marrying you here today in front of our closest friends and family, people who have been part of our journey in one way or another throughout our lives. I'm so happy to have everyone here with us today. Like, that's very general and generic, but you can change it. It's just like, using a phrase to acknowledge everybody there and how they're so special in this moment and how they're so important. It's so important that they were there to witness what's happening on your wedding day, okay? So that's my suggestion for the first 1 or 2 sentences. So you write that. That should take you about 10 minutes or less. And if you want, you can use my examples. I wrote all of this out on my blog. I'll put a link below. Step number 6 is to tell a love story in about 4 to 6 sentences, and this should take you about 15 minutes. So you want to tell a story about the two of you. So I'd say a story, but 4 to 6 sentences is really short. So this can be like the story of how you two met, the first time you realized you were in love with your partner. That's a really beautiful story to tell. A story of some kind of challenge you guys had together that was ultimately triumphant. Just like a fun story that when your partner made you laugh. It can really be anything, just some kind of sweet story. Our brains are wired as the human monkeys that we are to really connect with stories, and it makes them memorable. So you might notice when you think about weddings that you've been to, it's the stories and the vows that you remember the most, and details. So try not to be too general. Really, even though you've got 4 to 6 sentences here, be as specific as possible and use details like, oh, what was she wearing on that day, or the color of your partner's eyes you noticed. I don't know. These are cheesy details maybe that I'm giving, or examples that I'm giving here, but you understand. Try to pick out some details in a story and tell that. And you've got 15 minutes here, so don't worry about wordsmithing it, making it perfect. Just write down, or maybe just speak into your phone. You can use voice to text, and just write or speak this story as briefly as possible. Just summarize the sweet story between the two of you. And don't forget to say how you felt. How did you feel in that moment? And again, guys, I've got examples of this on my blog, so you can check out the post in the link below. For step number 7, you have another 15 minutes to write another 4 to 6 sentences expressing the qualities or the characteristics that you love about your partner. This should be pretty easy, but you can make it easier on yourself if like you're prepared and in the months before your wedding, you're just kind of taking a note of the things that you love about your partner as they pop up, as you think of them, and just you have like a note in your phone. If you have this list compiled, you can then just like pop them into your vows for number 7, for part 7 here. If not, just take a few moments. You've got 15 of them. Deep breaths, and just think about, what do you really love about your partner? What are some things you love? It doesn't have to be epic and amazing. It can be small, sweet things that you love about your partner. I really love how courageous you are. I love how adventurous you are. I love that every time I suggest something spontaneous, you're down for it. Whatever it is, whatever. I love you're snoring. That's probably, nobody loves anyone snoring, but you get the idea, right? Just write things that you love about your partner and try to keep it within 4 to 6 sentences. Okay, step number 8, you've got 10 minutes to write some promises. These are vows after all, so it's not supposed to be just a list of things that you love about your partner, although some people do that, but they're called vows because you're supposed to be making promises to this person for the rest of your life. And I kind of don't like how we think of this as suddenly we're married and now we have all these promises that we have to keep. Ideally, you've been like really kind to each other and being good people to each other before you got married, and you're going to continue making these promises every day to each other. So to me, these vows are just like a reiteration of things that you already have been doing and that you plan to continue doing or trying your best to continue doing in the future. My recommendation is to keep these as realistic and grounded as possible and not make really lofty, impossible vows that you're just going to end up breaking 2 weeks later. So think about things that you can actually promise to your partner and keep. Step number 9 is simply to remember to say, I love you. A lot of people forget to say this in their vows, forget to write it, so maybe the last line of your vows can simply be an I love you. And finally, step 10 is to practice saying this out loud. So some people write their vows and then they don't say them until the day of their wedding. and they can come out feeling really weird coming out of your mouth for the first time. So it's a really good idea to stand in front of a mirror or lay in bed or whatever and just read them. Just read them out loud a few times and see if they feel natural, if they're making you feel kind of choked up. If that's the case, it's okay. It's okay to feel choked up. Are you gonna be able to say them on your wedding day? Just does it feel natural to you? If you're not really happy with them, at least now you've spent an hour or less writing this draft and you have something that you can work with and tweak. Saying it out loud as much as possible and changing things to make it work for you. Some people think that practicing saying something out loud makes it less authentic when you actually say it, but that's really not true. It only makes you feel more comfortable and confident in your words when you say them on the day of. You wrote them, they're gonna sound authentic and real, so don't worry about, oh, practicing will make it seem not as genuine, and it's just not true. And another recommendation is to have a third party listen to both you and your partner's vows if possible. This is a really good idea, just to have somebody kind of tell you if they're about the same length and similar in tone, if that's something that you care about, okay? So that's it. You will have written your vows in an hour or less if you follow this simple template. If you're like me and you need to see things visually and in writing, I have this all like written out, typed out in a blog post, really easy step-by-step to follow. So just follow my link below. And also you'll see some examples, like I said. The last thing I want to talk about are tips for multilingual couples. So I'm from the US, my partner's from Quebec in Canada, which is the French-speaking part of Canada, and he also has relatives who speak Spanish because his father is from Spain and Venezuela. So if this is the case for you and you have some guests who speak multiple languages, there's a few ways that you can do this. You could do it like my sister-in-law and have one person say their vows in one language and the other person say their vows in a second language. So, and then do some of your readings in a third language if you have another language there. So that's what happened at this wedding, in French, English, and Spanish. And then at least your crowd can understand some of what's going on at the ceremony. If you don't want to do that, you could have both people say their vows in the same language, and then you can have cards printed of the vows in the second language. So if people don't understand what's happening, they can read the vows on the cards, preferably using eco-friendly paper, maybe plantable paper. So those are some of the ideas you could use for multilingual weddings. Let me know if you guys have any other ideas. Just drop it in the comments below. And also let me know if this helped you. Let me know if you're going to use this template to write your own vows. I'd be really curious if this helps you out. All right, thanks guys. Have a great day. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.